What's up, Christ Central, and welcome to another online Sunday service. If you don't know me by now, my name is Nick. I'm one of the pastors here at Christ Central. I'm so glad that you are tuning in to watch this, whether that's at one of our house churches or via our YouTube channel. Just want to say a big welcome. If you're watching for the first or second time, I really want to say a big welcome to you, and I want to encourage you, reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you, love to know what you think about the service, about the message that is going to be shared to us by Seth in a moment. But we have a real vision and a real heart here to help connect people to God's big story, and part of that means connecting you to community. Part of that means connecting you to your purpose. Part of that means helping you find your identity. There's loads of ways that you can find your place in God's big story, and we as a church want to help you. So do reach out to us. Email us at hello@christcentral.nyc. We'd love to connect with you and see how we can help you on your spiritual journey. Before we jump into this morning's message, which as I said is going to be brought to us by Seth Hoffman, I have three quick announcements for you. The first announcement is this, that next Sunday, that's the 25th of July, is going to be our final house church of the summer. Yeah, we're going to take August off, but next Sunday, the 25th of July, we're going to have house church at Dawn and Timmy's and at our place on 72nd Street. Love you to consider joining us for either of those. I'll be finishing off our preaching series called This is the Church, and it would be great to have you, but that's the last one of the summer. The second announcement is this then, really following on from that. So if we're having August off, what are we doing over August? Well, part of having August off is to give us all a bit of a break from kind of this and the production, certainly giving me a break from having to do this every week, but it's also wanting to take the time in August to just pause and to try and be a lot more social. You know, we know that this year has been incredibly challenging and incredibly difficult in many ways, and one of the things that's been taken away from us in these last 12 months is community. And so we're going to host a whole bunch of events, all outdoors, just to give people the opportunity to try and reconnect and come back into gathering together again. And next to me there should be a slide with some of the highlighted events that we've got coming up. We're going to have picnics every Sunday in place of house church. We've got a baptism on the 1st of August. Love for you to come to support. That's Becca Shickley. She's going to be baptised and sharing her journey on that Sunday. Love you to come along to that. We've got a ladies' night where Becca's going to host some drinks. We've got a kids outdoor movie night at our place on the 7th of July. And the biggest event that I really want to highlight to you is this summer stroll on the 13th of August. If you don't know about the summer stroll, Bayridge shuts off about 15 blocks on 3rd Avenue. On the 13th is going to be between 70th and 85th. And we have a booth, we have a stall at that 3rd Avenue Summer Stroll. We're going to be giving stuff away. We're going to be trying to reach out and communicate to people who we are and what we're all about. And we've got a great creative idea that we're going to plan. Hopefully create some amazing art piece as we did a couple of years ago. I'd love for you to get those dates in your calendar, especially the summer stroll. And if you're able and willing and free, we would absolutely love for you to come and support us and help us to run that event. We need as many hands as possible. So get those dates in your calendar. We'll communicate more about those in our regular weekly email. We also will put stuff in our WhatsApp group. If you're not connected to either of those lines of communication, please get in touch with us. Email us at hello@christcentral.nyc. We can get you involved in our WhatsApp group and on the weekly email, and we would love to connect with you more. You can obviously also keep up to date on our Instagram page as well, where we share a lot of information. So first announcement is that next Sunday is our last house church. Then second announcement is plans for August. The final announcement is this. I just want to say that all of these events that we're running cost money. We as a church have expenses. In fact, moving into September, we're looking to hire a venue again. We've got plans and hopes and dreams, but it costs money. And PJ Smythe, a good friend and pastor of ours, he says that our money is our fuel for our mission. As we give to the local church, it enables and funds and fuels mission. It helps people who don't know Jesus to come to know him. And we don't talk about money a lot here, but I do just want to lay this out again and say, if you're not giving on a weekly basis to us as a church, would you please take some time to think and pray about it? Really, I'm only talking to those of you who really see Christ Central as your home community, as your home church. We would love for you to be thinking that through and thinking about what can you give to help fuel and fund the mission of Jesus. Of course, as we give, there is an amazing supernatural thing that happens in our own hearts, and we grow and we free ourselves from the fear of money and all of those things, and see God as our provider as well. But primarily want to encourage you, can you help fuel our mission this summer and beyond by giving financially to us as a church? If you want to do that, you can email us at hello@christcentral.nyc, or you can jump onto our website, and there's a tab underneath one of the sections where you can click on give, and it will give you all the details that you need to do there. Okay, so those three announcements out of the way. Now it's time for Seth. I'm so pleased that Seth is going to be speaking to us today. We've been in the middle of a preaching series called This is the Church, really looking at what is the church and what's its purpose. We've talked about it being a body, being a family, how we're the chosen people of God. We've talked about how the purpose of the church's mission is work, is worship, and now Seth is going to speak to us about what does it mean for the church to engage in mercy and justice. A very timely topic with everything that's happened over these last 18 months. Please put your phones away, tune in, unless you're watching on your phone, that is, but tune in and really engage with what Seth is going to say. He's got a real heart for this, and he's taught me a lot about what it means for the church to serve in justice and mission, so I'm really excited that he's sharing it with us today. So Seth, brother, over to you.
Hey everybody, my name is Seth, and I'm really excited to get to share something with you today. I remember when I was in high school, I grew up in New Hampshire, and I think I was a junior in high school. September 11th had just happened, so it was in the fall of it was my sophomore year of high school. And the November after that, President George W. Bush came to New Hampshire to sign an important piece of legislation called No Child Left Behind, which had a lot of, education implications that we're still feeling today. And he came to the University of New Hampshire, and he was kind of making a speech about it and going to be signing it there. And I, was not super politically activated before this day. But my neighbor next door, they were like card-carrying Republicans, and they knew a lot of people in the Republican Party. And so somehow I got invited up onto the stage behind George W. Bush. Whenever I play Two Truths and a Lie, I always have this as one of my lies, so I guess I'll have to, or truths, so I guess I'll have to think of a new one. But so I was up on stage behind George W. Bush as he's making this big announcement, and afterward I got to shake his hand. It was like a really powerful moment. But then as I left the gymnasium where his speech was happening, there were a bunch of protesters outside. And they were protesting our response to September 11th, which is that we began the war in Afghanistan. And I was so confused. Like I said, I wasn't very aware of things politically as a 16-year-old or whatever, sophomore. And I was really confused because when September 11th happened, I, like all of us, was so shaken up by it. And I actually thought about joining the military. And I know some of you think that's kind of funny because I'm not the kind of person who likes to fight. But I did. It was my reaction. I thought, I'm going to join the U.S. military to right this injustice. And, here we are 2 months later, and I'm seeing all these people protest and, being against the war. I was very confused. And it kind of blew my mind because for the first time, I was aware that people had a view of the world that was very different from my own. That they had different experiences, different perspectives, different solutions. And it really opened up my mind to the question, what is justice? And I haven't cracked the code on that. I don't claim to know that. But I remember that it was a very important moment in my life where I started to realize that I didn't see the whole picture, that I needed to understand other people's perspectives if I was going to do what was quote-unquote right or in line with justice. And, as I was preparing for this message, Nick asked if I would speak on justice and mercy. And, it was a little humbling because obviously justice is an issue that's way too expansive for me to really do it any justice this morning here at church. Even with a series of messages, that would be really difficult. But my hope is that this message is going to challenge every single person that's listening to this, no matter your background. But that it would also bring the comfort of God to each one of you, especially if you are very aware this morning that you have experienced injustice. Maybe you've even experienced injustice at the hand of God's people. But whether you are a Christian today or you are just exploring faith, I really believe that the Bible has a lot to speak to each one of us, both to challenge us and to comfort us, okay? When you read the Bible, you have to work really hard to pretend that the God of the Bible doesn't care deeply about injustice. Justice and mercy are themes that we actually see throughout the entire Bible in the Old Testament and the New Testament. Actually, in the Old Testament, it's one of the biggest issues, one of the biggest bones that God had to pick with the people of Israel. In fact, Old Testament books like Amos and Micah, Jeremiah, Isaiah, and New Testament books like Galatians, they speak to issues surrounding racism, classism, neglecting the poor, and more. And I think, probably in God's opinion, the worst thing was when God's people would spend their time doing religious activities, that they would look like they cared about God, when other people were watching, but in other areas of their lives, they were causing great injustices. It was one of the biggest bones that God had to pick with his people. In Isaiah chapter 1, verse 15, one of the most significant prophetic books of the Old Testament, this is how it starts. It's God speaking to his people. He says, "When you spread out your hands, I will hide my eyes from you. Even though you make many prayers, I will not listen. Your hands are full of blood. Wash yourselves. Make yourselves clean. Remove the evil of your deeds from being before my eyes. Cease to do evil and learn to do good." He says, "Seek justice. Correct oppression. Bring justice to the fatherless and plead the widow's cause." Oppressing other people or even neglecting injustices really has a deep spiritual implication, right? The Christian faith is a relationship with God. When we participate in injustice or oppression, either knowingly or unknowingly in some cases, we are negatively impacting that relationship with God. That's what that passage is implying, that God's relationship with his people was there was some brokenness in it because of the way that they were treating and oppressing others. In marriage, we understand this, right? If you're really, if one day you're really loving to your wife and you post that, really smarmy Facebook post about how much you love them, but then when they're away, you're giving all your time to pornography, that is going to impact your marriage relationship, right? It has to. So we can't be religious on Sundays and then go and do evil during the week and think it's not going to, impact our relationship with God. It will. Another Old Testament prophet, Micah, said in Micah 6:8, talking about what God has told us, "He has told you, oh man, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you but to do justice and love kindness and to walk humbly with your God?" Sometimes people are like, "Hey Seth, what should I do with my life?" This verse right here is a pretty good guiding principle. God has told you what is good. To do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly with your God. Or as Jesus said in Mark chapter 12, verse 30 and 31, someone asked him, what is the greatest commandment? And he said, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind and all your strength. But the second is this, love your neighbor as yourself. And there is no commandment greater than these." By the way, you might not have realized how much the Old Testament and New Testament have in common. I used to think there was a real discrepancy between the Old Testament, the God of that we see in the Old Testament and Jesus in the New Testament. Like, the Old Testament God was like really moody and angry, but Jesus was like the chilled out version. I've come to see that that's really not true. The more I get familiar with the Bible, the more I see the continuity of this whole story of God and how God really hasn't changed. He is a God who cares for the oppressed. He is a God who cares to right injustices. And I have amazing news for every American, and even, the Brits who are here on American soil. Jesus is not a Republican. And Jesus is not a Democrat. Okay? The thing is, when politics and religion get mixed up, do you know what you get? You get politics. You get a power struggle. And the kingdom of God really can't fit nicely into a box. And it will certainly not fit into the two-party system of the United States. The kingdom of God isn't based on capitalism. America isn't the kingdom of God, and it isn't the fulfillment of Old Testament promises. It's not. A lot of times people get that kind of confused. The truth is, the church in America has, a spotty history at best. Throughout history, the history of this country, there are stories of amazing good deeds that have been done by Christians in the name of Jesus, whether that's feeding the poor or, bringing public housing or healing the sick in hospitals. So much of that was kind of stirred in Western culture by the church. But there are also stories of the church doing horrendous evil, using the Bible to defend things like slavery, and to oppress people without power. White supremacy has taken many forms in American history, but many of the forms of outward white supremacy, they felt at home in churches in America. And, no matter what your thought is on that, that should really mess with your mind. How is it possible that in America, people who really hold to issues of white supremacy have felt at home in a church? Why is that? How is that possible? So, no matter your political affiliation or worldview, each one of us is called to love God and to love our neighbors as ourselves. Actually, there's no commandment greater than those two things. So, with that in mind, how can you and I, really live that out and avoid issues of personal and systemic injustice? I believe that the best way we can do this is to, see through the lens of the life of Jesus. We're called Christ Central. He's at the center of everything that we are doing as a church. And so when it comes to issues of justice, I want him to be at the center as well. So I was thinking about this, there were really three ways that I saw Jesus engaging issues of justice and mercy on a consistent basis. The first is compassion. Jesus demonstrated compassion to the others. In Mark chapter 1, he said, there's a story, and it says, a man with leprosy, which was a skin disease that would make people unclean and unable to really participate in, religious traditions of the people of Israel. It said, a man with leprosy came and knelt in front of Jesus begging to be healed. If you are willing, you can heal me and make me clean, he said. Moved with compassion, Jesus reached out and touched him. I am willing, he said, be healed. And instantly the leprosy disappeared and the man was healed. Jesus had compassion and it brought healing. I believe that compassion really begins with curiosity. When we talk about issues of injustice and mercy, sometimes we talk about issues like there aren't people involved. If you're talking about something about abortion or racism, something like that, we can kind of live up here in the philosophical and theoretical and forget that actually these are personal issues that are impacting people, and each of us needs to understand where people are coming from. We need to begin to see the person behind the issue. I was watching this video yesterday about Elon Musk and some of the crazy stuff that he is doing. He's starting all these different businesses. One of them is called Neuralink, started a while ago, and it's about this a connection between our brain and a computer, a brain to computer interface, a BCI, and it's a weird concept but super interesting, and I've followed it a little bit. But one of the things that this video was talking about was how if in the future, if we all had something like a Neuralink, we could have something called shared memories, where people who have experienced a certain situation and they have that memory, that other people could experience it almost in a first-hand way, to genuinely see it through another person's eyes. Wouldn't that be amazing if you were able to see what someone was experiencing in a different country or from a different city, to understand what it was like to live in systems of oppression, and I feel like it would be that would make it super easy to feel compassion towards someone else. But, we can't do that now, and maybe that'll never happen. Who knows? But it was such an interesting idea. Since we can't have those shared memories right now, though, the beginning of compassion is to see and to listen to someone. Before we can help someone find their place in God's big story, we need to be gentle listeners to the story that someone has already walked. That means when someone's telling you their story, you're not instantly thinking about, how can you correct their thinking or change the way. It's genuinely listening with compassion, asking curious questions. I really believe that's the beginning of finding something about justice. That's how I felt on that day with the protesters outside this thing. At first I felt indignant and angry, but then I started to feel curious. What is it that they saw that I didn't see that would cause them to come out and protest at something like this? So when it comes to seeing issues of justice through Jesus' eyes, the first thing we need is compassion, and the second thing that we need is conviction. What do we really believe, and live it out? Jesus, there's a story in John chapter 2 where he comes and he turns the tables over in the outer courts where people were exchanging money in the temple. And he says that really it was supposed to be a house of prayer for all nations, but they've turned it into, just changing money. And so, a lot of people talk about that as Jesus really not being cool with the idea of commodifying God and selling faith, which I think there's definitely some truth to that. But the second thing is that because the money changers and selling sacrifices and things all were in the outer courts, that was called the court of the Gentiles, where non-Jewish people could come and kind of participate in their way in the worship of God. So it was almost inherently racist because there was no more space. This was the only part of the temple where they were allowed to go, and now they can't even really go there because there's so much business happening there. Only Jewish people could go further into the temple courts. And, I think conviction, Jesus demonstrated that in that situation. Conviction is something I want to have more of. I've been around people, maybe you have too, who have so much conviction and are so passionate about things. And it makes you think, do I even care about anything? Is there anything really undergirding how I'm spending my days? Being with people of conviction just kind of stirs me and challenges me to think about what I really value and if I'm living that out. And, the reality is that as Christians, ethics and, values, they are not arbitrary and evolving. They are timeless. God's vision of justice doesn't necessarily match our current cultural narrative or the zeitgeist of what is truly just and ethical now. Ethics are kind of constantly evolving. Currently right now across the world, there are many different cultural narratives and different understandings of ethics, but that's also true throughout time. And there are areas of alignment, to be sure, but culture is always changing, and truth is not. And as a believer in Jesus, our understanding of what is true and just really needs to come straight out of the Bible. And that's where, it's such a gift that we have the Bible, because we can understand and we can see this big arc of God's story and what is true and good and right. So we can engage in that and actually grow conviction from that place, which is essential for injustice, for combating injustice. Because if we don't have conviction, when it gets hard to fight against injustice, we're going to give up. But if we have conviction and we know what is true and right and good, then we will have confidence and conviction to keep moving forward and pushing back darkness. So we need compassion. We need conviction. And the third thing, it doesn't fit as well, is protection. They all have shun at the end, but it's, not alliteration. Protection, right? Think of the story of Jesus with the woman who was caught in adultery, right? Men were all about to stone her because she had been caught in adultery, and Jesus shows up and they're like, well, should we stone her according to the law? And his answer was, whoever is without sin should cast the first stone. And of course, if they were honest, they had all committed many sins, and so they all walked away and did not stone her. Maybe we should change that story. Instead of the woman caught in adultery, it's the men caught in hypocrisy. Let's think about that one. In order to protect people, we have to put things on the line. When it comes to standing up for this woman, Jesus literally was in the middle of a potentially violent situation. And also, people were questioning his integrity as a teacher of the scriptures. What does he say? He put himself on the line in order to protect this woman. For you to genuinely engage in issues of justice, it is going to cost you. People don't engage in justice for this very reason. So if you want to engage in justice issues, it's going to cost you. It's going to cost you probably financially. It's going to cost you relationally. And, in many other ways. When we defend the weak, it's going to cost us some of our strength. Okay? So it's important that we take a stand, both with our mouths and with our pocketbooks, for those who can't defend themselves. We need to protect them. The issues around justice, we need to have compassion, to have conviction, and to bring protection to the people around us. Okay, now that all sounds good, and you might be saying, yeah, Seth, yeah. But the truth of that is harder than it sounds, right? I mean, for instance, personally, when we do something wrong, what do we want? We want mercy. We want forgiveness. We want people to be gentle with us. But when someone else does something wrong to us, what do we want? We want justice, right? And our default mode when it comes to issues of justice, really, I think we're talking about community and society as a whole. And our default mode is for us to have mercy on people who look, act, and think like we do. And we want justice for those who don't. Or we want, there to be justice for those people. And, that's just a part of our human nature. This is kind of our default mode, and it's a whole different construct of our experience growing up, our current experience, all kinds of different things. And we've seen this a lot over the last few years, right? It's so easy to pass judgment on people that hold different beliefs and worldviews than you. And we need to just really look at that for a moment. Look at ourselves and think about how easy it is to jump to judgment on others, or to want, justice to be enacted on someone else, when if someone believes like we believe, we want mercy. Be gentle with us. Forgive us. So if you believe me that we need compassion, conviction, and protection, then how can you begin to see the world and issues of justice through these lenses a little bit more? The first thing is compassion. For us to practice compassion, it begins with listening without judgment. All right? If we're really going to be compassionate, we need to understand. We don't have the neural link yet, right? You don't have that embedded, but you can listen. You can hear someone. You can genuinely seek to understand and not correct. All right? Sometimes when you listen to someone who has a different perspective than you, you're looking for where you can poke the holes, and that's really not very good listening. Listening is truly seeking to understand, not seeking to, correct them. So the first way that we can grow in compassion is to find people who think differently than us and ask them about those thoughts and experiences, ask them about their story, and to listen without judgment or correction. Really try to understand where they're coming from. That's where compassion begins. If maybe you are super compassionate, but you lack conviction, then honestly, getting into the Bible is such an important step for you. Maybe you don't know where to start when it comes to the Bible. A lot of times when people don't have experience with the Bible, I tell them to start where I started, which is in the New Testament, because I was able to understand the life of Jesus a lot more. Reading through the book of John or the book of Mark, it kind of made more sense to me, and then I was able to expand and understand other parts of the Bible a little bit. God really has thoughts on all of these things. He has very clear thoughts on issues of justice. And you can find all of those in the Bible. And the third thing is protection, right? We can listen, we can grow conviction as we marinate in God's truth. But finally, if we're going to protect people, we need to take action. Take action. What is the action that you need to take? Justice does not happen here. It happens here. It happens as we actually change the way we behave to defend other people, to protect them, to express compassion and conviction. We need to move from in our head to in our hands when it comes to justice. So what step do you need to take in order to take action? Maybe there's an organization that you need to get involved in. You've thought about doing it for a long time. It's kind of further down your to-do list and it always gets pushed off. Maybe it's time to reach out to them. Maybe there's a conversation you need to strike up. Someone at the workplace or, someone that you know at the cafe. You might have been hesitant to do this in the past because you felt like, oh, well, if I listen to someone who thinks differently than me and I share my opinions, well, then I'm going to get into trouble or I could even lose my job. But what I'm asking you to do is not do that. Go and listen with compassion. Seek to truly understand. Nobody gets fired for that. Okay, maybe you need to strike up that conversation. Maybe there is a nonprofit that you care about who needs you to put your money where your mouth is, right? You talk about different ways that you care about things, but actually, you can, maybe you've only given at the end of the year or something like that. And actually, God has given you provision so that you can fight injustice with this organization. Maybe it's a small everyday injustice that happens at your school or at the office, and you need to raise your voice and protect somebody, right? It might seem like a little thing, but actually you've seen it. There's a habit of it. It's almost a systemic issue, and you need to raise your voice to protect that person. Do it. Take action. As each one of us begins to lean into compassion and conviction and protection collectively, we will truly begin to push back darkness across New York City. We will. We will. The truth is, though, that none of us can do this perfectly. I don't pretend to. Nick doesn't. Nobody does. We can't do it as a church, and we can't do it as individuals. Each one of us is going to fail to live up to the ideals that we hold so tightly. But that's one of the reasons that Jesus came, right? To right the ultimate injustice. We had turned away from God. We had each gone our own way and decided what was right and wrong for ourselves. But Jesus came, not as a lightning bolt to strike us down for the injustice that we had done in turning up our noses to God, but to show us a new way, to show us a different way, to show us how to defend the weak and bring healing to the broken, to show us how to set captives free with truth. He showed us how to lay down our lives as we followed him. And in the end, he laid down his life for us, so that the injustice that we have done to others and to God could be paid for. And so that the injustices that others have done to us could be healed. He came and laid down his life so that we could be set free from those things and begin to set others free with that same hope in the amazing gospel of Jesus. Maybe today's the first day that you want to really lay hold of that for yourself, to receive his forgiveness because justice was poured out on Jesus. Or maybe it's to receive his healing, to know that God saw the injustice that you experienced. He saw you, he knew you, and he came and laid down his life so that you could be healed, be restored, that peace could be in your heart. His invitation to us as individuals and us as Christ Central is to join his mission, to do justice, to love kindness, and walk humbly with our God. And as we do that, we're going to see Bay Ridge, we're going to see South Brooklyn, we're going to see New York City turned upside down. All right, love you guys. Thanks.